Okay, so today we're going to look at doing the carnation, and I'm going to take a small amount of our flower paste, and I'm going to need a 26 wire. So I'm using a wire in green, and I'm only taking a very, very small amount of paste. I'm going to mould that paste round, and as you can see it's very, very small, and I'm going to elongate it slightly so that I've got a cone shape. I'm going to dip my wire into my edible glue, and because it's rolled off the table, I'm going to make another one. Okay, so I'm going to take a small cone shape, take the wire that's slightly dipped into the edible glue, and I'm just going to place the wire into that, and I'm going to just secure it onto the wire. Now it doesn't matter if you can see the wire through it. You just need to make sure that it's secure. Now, as with all the centres, they ideally need to be left for about 12 hours before you work on them, ideally, so that there's no risk of them falling off. Okay. When they're dry, you're then ready to start the next stage. Now, the other pieces of equipment I need my cell stick or a modelling tool. I need small sharp scissors, small rolling pin, a paintbrush, my edible glue, and I might need a small amount of shortening or white fat just for my board, just to prevent any paste from sticking. And obviously I need a good quality flower paste. The other thing I need is a carnation cutter. Now, if you're using the gem set, they recommend number 41 as a carnation cutter, but you can buy carnation cutters yourself, okay? And these are made of usually plastic rather than metal. Now, you'll notice that the two cutters are different. Obviously they're different in size, and you can buy these in various sizes, and it's a good idea to have 3 different sizes if you can. If not, you can just have the one size, and then you adjust the thickness of the paste. But you'll notice the difference is that this plastic one that's in cream coloured has actually got small lines within the curves, and the black one hasn't. Okay, the black one is just a curve. Okay, so it's just a normal fluted round cutter. Now, those lines are quite important because they assist us in the frilling of the flower. I'm going to roll this out, so I'm just going to put a little bit more fat on, just to get a little bit of an anchor. And that enables me to roll it a bit further. I'm going to keep turning the paste to make sure that it's not stuck to the surface, and I need the paste to be thin. Like for all our petals, they need to look natural, and they need to be very, very thin. Now if you've got a pad with a dampened cloth inside, you know, in a plastic bag or a plastic wallet with a dampened J-cloth inside, you can cut out multiple petals and put them underneath and they won't dry out. Now carnations can come in different sizes, and for the bud stage you might only need one of the shapes, and if you're doing a larger flower you might need two, and if you're doing a very large carnation you might have 3 or even 6 shapes. So I'm going to place them to one side, and I'm going to pick up my scissors. Because I've used the gem cutter, I need to recreate these small lines that are on this cutter, and so I'm going to take small scissors and I'm just going to put 2 small cuts in each flute. And when we ball this out, that will make the frilliness of the flower. Okay. I'm then going to take the sponge pad and I'm going to take my cell stick. Now some pastes won't facilitate going in a circular action around, and if that's the case you might have to just do it backwards and forwards on each flute. What you're trying to do is eliminate all them cut lines that you've got, and even if you're using the pre-cut one, you still need to be able to eliminate those lines so that they don't look like that they're part of the flower. Okay. Now the first petal is probably the most complicated one to put on, and I'm going to take my edible glue and I'm going to put glue all over that petal, almost to the edge. I'm going to take my centre, and I can put a little touch of glue on that as well. Don't forget, this is a centre that's been dried for several hours, and I'm placing the centre of the wire into the centre of the petal, and then I'm going to fold that over and then I'm going to press it in so that I've got a sort of like a half circle. I'm then going to put some glue on a quarter of one side of the half circle, and I'm going to press that around and up to the top. I'm then going to turn it over and I'm going to do the same on the other side. So as I say, this is the most complicated one to put on, and then I'm going to fold that over. And it's important at this stage that I try and create a triangular shape at the bottom. If everything isn't sort of sticking together I'm going to put a bit more glue on just to manoeuvre the petals around. And I'm going to use the space between my finger and my thumb to shape it so that it is round. Now that one petal wrapped around is sufficient to be a bud, because you're going to be doing 3 carnations of various sizes. The first one could be a bud. They don't all have to be the full carnations. It depends what you want to do with them in your display. And then I'm going to put that to one side while I get my next piece ready. Okay, so the ideal thing is to do all your carnation stages at the same time. So if I was doing 2 more carnations or 4, 6 carnations, I would put on all the first petal all at the same time. Then if I wanted some to be medium-sized flowers, then I would put on another petal. And if I wanted any to be large, then they would have 3 or more petals until I got the size that I wanted. You have to be fairly quick doing these cuts because it will dry up otherwise. And again, make sure that, and I'm pressing really hard, because if I don't press very much, those cut lines stay. So I need to put a lot of pressure on to get rid of those lines, and so that it just looks like a natural frill on the actual petal. But as I say, you can either go around, or if your paste is quite sticky, then you can just do an outward action, but still put lots of pressure on so that you eliminate all the little cuts, so it should just look frilly. Put the glue on that one, and then take your first stage that you've just done and drop that down, and then just carefully attach it to that petal by cupping it in and shaping it. You're still trying to keep that triangular shape underneath, but you're trying to create a round shape on top. Use your cell stick to shape things. And again, put it between your thumb and your finger, because that helps give you a natural shape, so that you've got a rounded shape on top and you've got the cone shape underneath. Now when we come to put the calyx on, it's important that we do have that cone shape there. Put that to one side again. And if I wanted to make that even bigger, what I could do is I could take another petal, and again I've got to cut it, now because I've put it underneath the the plastic that's got the cool cloth inside, it's prevented it from drying up. And so it's still very, very pliable to enable me to do this. Now if you haven't got any scissors, very small scissors, you could use a craft knife. But obviously you don't want to do any cutting on your board, because otherwise you will damage it. And then do exactly the same. Plenty of pressure. to eliminate those cut shaped lines. Now if you need that to be bigger than what the cut petal is, then if you ball outwards from the centre, you'll find that it will stretch the paste, and so it will become bigger, and therefore it will fit round the centre of your petals better. Now you only need to do that if the cone underneath your flower is quite big. And then put your glue on. Now the cone under this is quite big, so what I'm going to do at this stage, I'm just going to take a little bit of the excess paste off. You don't need to do this, but you can do it if you think your cone is too big. So that's made it a little bit more shallower underneath. Now if your wire is too thin, and this one is quite thin, you'll find that it won't support very well when you're trying to put it together. So put plenty of glue on. I need good quality glue, because if you're using old glue, then it's going to be, you know, not as sticky as it could be. And just place it between your hand, your thumb and your finger. You can clasp them around it and just shape it. Just pull out those petals because they're not dry yet, so the outer ones have got a little bit of movement on them. Okay. So that's 3 petals. Now that would do as a larger carnation, or you could keep adding the petals. You know, you could add another 3, and that would make a very, very big flower indeed. But what you've got to consider is if you're putting them in an arrangement or a bouquet, they've got to look in scale with the other flowers. So if your roses are, and a rose does tend to be a bigger flower, the carnation shouldn't be bigger than the rose. It might be bigger than a rose bud, but not a large rose. So keep things in proportion. And then you leave that to dry before you put the calyx on. Okay, so now we're ready to put the calyx on the carnation. Remember, they ideally need to set for a while. Here's one that I made a few hours ago, and you can see that it's got the coned end underneath. It's quite a shallow cone, but it will give us the effect that we want once the calyx has gone on. I'm just going to place that there, and we're going to use a pulled flower technique to make the calyx. I'm going to take a small amount of paste, probably a large pea size of paste, and I'm going to mould that round so that it's free from cracks. Then I'm going to make a cone shape by rolling it on the palm of my hand with my finger. And then I'm going to take my cell stick, or you might use a modelling tool, or you might want to use the end of a paintbrush. And I'm going to hollow that cone out. I'm going to open it out because it needs to be able to slide up the back of that carnation. So if the cone is very wide, then obviously this top part needs to be wide as well. I'm thinning it against my cell stick. And it doesn't really matter how many points you have on this calyx. It's not a traditional calyx that would have, say, 5. This can have many, so it doesn't really matter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut into 3, and then I'm going to cut again in between, so that I've got 6 cuts. Now if you've got some that are wider than others, you can add another cut to make it more even. Okay, so you can see that I've got those cuts on the top. I'll open that out, and I've got that cone shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch those ends together. So anybody who's done pulled flowers before will know this technique. So I'm pinching with my fingertips so that I've got now pointed sepals on the calyx. Make sure that it's still the right shape. I still need that cone shape underneath. And because these are thick, I'm now going to make them thinner by rolling them against my finger. Now if they go out of shape, don't worry, because we're going to pinch them together again in a moment. So pinch to make the points again. Now if any do go, very out of shape, then you can use your small scissors to trim off any shapes that you don't want to be there. And then you just point them again and shape them. Now once you've got your points done, you're then going to put your cell stick or your modelling tool back in to the centre, so that it cups up. And then I'm going to put the glue into the centre and up the sepals, or the pointed part. And then I'm going to thread my wire of my carnation through. Now if it comes out of the side, don't worry, just pull it out again and just push it back in so that it becomes centered. And then I'm going to attach that to the flower. Now these calyx sepals or points shouldn't be loose, so they should be against the flower. If you need to put more glue, put more glue. When we've done the rose, sometimes we've left the sepals stick out a bit, but on the carnation it sits flush to the base of the flower. And then just smooth it around. Now if it's longer than what you want underneath, you can just take a little bit of paste off and take that excess off, and then just curve it to the wire, just twist it to the wire. And now we've got our carnation. and it's got its calyx on as well.